Good evening, everyone. It's a nice Wednesday evening, and here I am sitting in my studio at home, and I thought that I would cover a practice strategy called voicing. This is an essential practice strategy in order to have our students play beautiful musical lines. Voicing means to bring out one of the voices within an interval or a chord in the same hand. So usually the voicing occurs in the right hand, but as students learn more and more challenging repertoire, they will have to voice as well in the left hand. The essential ingredient in being able to voice beautifully is the ear. So we always want our students to listen to themselves play, think about what sound they want to create in the musical phrases, and then create the physical gestures in order to make the sounds that they would want others to hear and for them to produce at the instrument. So this wonderful little scherzo in F major is a perfect piece to talk about voicing. This little scherzo was actually found in a compilation called Pieces for a Musical Clock. And in the classical era, a few musical clocks, well, who knows how many there are only a few in existence, were built so that pieces were inserted into the clock. So every hour, at the strike of every hour, a new piece would be heard. Can you believe that? So this Viennese clock was owned by a family, and they nicknamed their clock the coffee party, because when they heard this particular piece, they knew that they could stop everything and have an afternoon coffee. So the clocks actually had a box at the bottom of them, and there were pipes that were horizontally placed. So the sound is quite delicate and sweet when you hear it actually in the form of that musical clock. But here we're playing the piece on the piano, and it's written with both hands in treble clef. So we get that nice feeling of chimingness and sweetness and delicacy. All right, that little piece, as you can tell, is an ABA form, and there are some contrasting sections to it, as well as some very nice strong chords that contrast with the delicacy of the rest of the piece. So where do you hear voicing taking place? It starts in the very, very first line in the right hand. So we have a single voice, and then we have third intervals, and then a C major chord. So you notice I'm voicing the top line. What would happen if I voice the bottom of that line? It would be quite heavy and wouldn't sound particularly sweet and like a musical clock, of course. What would happen if I didn't voice either voice and all I did was play both voices completely the same? So again, pretty heavy, right? That'd be quite heavy. So in order for us to bring out the top voice, we do a practice strategy where we have the weight transferred to the upper part of the hand. We hold on to that note, and the lower note is played pianissimo and staccato, like this. Okay, make sure that when your student does this practice strategy, they don't lock their wrist. Okay, so in the next line, just at the very end, we don't want to hear too much thumb. Instead, let's voice the top voice. So let's anchor our finger pads into those keys and do the same staccato and pianissimo practice strategy. So the next line, we have a few voicings that have to be in the right hand, and then the left hand takes over. Listen to this. Okay, so if I voice the bottom of these thirds, oh my gosh, so clunky, right? And if we didn't do any voicing, heavy, dull, non-exciting. All right, so again, this time we're going to have our students transfer their weight to the top of their hand on their thumb. And you notice they don't have to play it at any kind of tempo, just slowly enough so that they can think about bringing out the voice that needs to be louder than the other. So the next section, listen to this. So now we have a melody that starts in the upper part of the left hand and then continues with the bottom voice of the right hand. And then we continue with the bottom of the left hand. And the left hand actually has the melody here. But do you notice, even though my right hand has an accompaniment kind of role, I'm still bringing out the top melody. Bum, bum, bum. So you'll notice this transferring of weight takes time to listen to and a voice. So patience, patience, and always springing up with a wrist so that there isn't any tightness or locking in the wrist. So the next section, all those thirds need to be beautifully voiced. So experiment with your students, experiment with the sound, and definitely imagine that the hand is actually coming up from the keys. And you know what? Then when the student gets more and more comfortable with it and they play it up to tempo, then it will be nice and clear and beautifully voiced.